Cette déclaration sera suivie d'un débat. J'invite les membres du Congrès à accueillir le président de la République.
There's an element of performance in any leadership. And Emmanuel Macron, winning France's imperial presidency before his 40th birthday, dominates the national stage completely.
If Macron fails, there's no alternative. And the risk is that Le Pen or someone like Le Pen becomes the next president of France.
President Macron is very much concerned by the historical moment we are living. The United Kingdom is leaving the European Union, and there is a rise of nationalism throughout the continent, which we have to fight.
L'Europe doit être plus forte.
As a teenager, Macron took centre stage in school plays. In the eyes of opponents, his performance and ambition have regularly trumped conviction. France's political drama became dominated by a dazzling leading man who articulated a plot of the broadest possible appeal. The problem for Macron now is that as the first act of his political drama has gone on, many have come to the conclusion that he's only interested in the reaction of one particular type of audience, the few, the elite. Macron first tasted power in a socialist government, but he walked out on them and launched his own movement, En Marche. It managed at one and the same time to be a grassroots movement and a top-down machine. As Corinne Lepage, a former environment minister drawn towards it, soon discovered.
Et même au sein d'En Marche, je considérais que c'était un parti bien peu démocratique, où il n'y avait en fait pas d'élection, réellement. Mais la réalité du pouvoir est concentrée à l'Élysée, plus que jamais. Et ce pouvoir est exercé à l'Élysée de manière quasi exclusive par des jeunes hommes, qui sont tous les mêmes, c'est des clones.
Typically, perhaps, given Macron's mercurial rise, his first electoral test was on the greatest stage of national politics, the presidential elections. In 2017, he relied on the implosion of other centrist candidates. He got just 24% in the first round, but united the established parties behind him in the second in order to beat the National Front's Marine Le Pen.
Il me semblait que vous aviez tenté de les infantiliser beaucoup dernièrement. Monsieur Macron.
In victory, Macron deliberately adopted a more imperial style, appearing at the Louvre Palace to mark his inauguration.
Je pense qu'il y avait la volonté de rentrer très vite dans le costume présidentiel, d'avoir des éléments symboliques et d'incarner aussi la France. France moderne, France is back.
C'est un peu un roi sans couronne. Il a un peu forcé le trait, comment dire.
Macron got to work, reducing a wealth tax and taking on the unions with a revised labour law.
It's a totally big problem for us.
But after a resounding electoral victory, he was in no mood to compromise.
Ni au fainéant, ni au cynique.
This was announced very clearly, and French people discovered something that was relatively unusual by French standards, that you're saying during the campaign what you're going to do, and after you're elected, you're doing it. And for a year, it worked just fine. He had a mandate.
Macron launched some policies to help the poor too, but many French focused on steps that favoured business and the better off. And even his walkabouts yielded moments that critics used to flag up the president's arrogance and hauteur.
Maintenant, hôtel, café, restaurant, je traverse la rue, je vous en trouve, ils veulent simplement des gens qui sont prêts à travailler, avec les contraintes du métier.
Et c'est pas sa culture, c'est plutôt cette forme d'arrogance et l'impression qu'il était loin d'eux, qu'il les regardait d'en haut.
Roubaix in the north of France is one of those places where people are just about managing, and Macron's honeymoon was very short. It's a Rust Belt town where old industries have gone, but the president's plan to turn France into a start-up nation has yet to deliver results. Ali's been running his stall in this street market for 17 years, but he told us he'll soon be giving up.
Ça, franchement, là, on vit vraiment juste. On n'arrive même pas à payer notre facture. Hein. Et là, actuellement, j'ai beaucoup de factures, je ne les ai pas payées.
Last September, with discontent building, Macron proposed a fuel tax rise. And that proved to be the tipping point for the left behind of France's regions, who seized the yellow vests from their vehicles and took to the streets.
Il est déconnecté avec nous. Ce qu'il dit, ça sert à rien. Il veut rester sur sa politique. On augmente les taxes. Pas de problème. En gros, il nous déclare la guerre. Mais là, il déclare la guerre au peuple français.
So was the gilets jaunes crisis triggered by Macron's missteps? Or would any inhabitant of the Élysée have faced it?
What's your own view?
My view is that we have 3 decades of difficulties in this country, and the moment where growth is coming back, when unemployment is diminishing, people who have low wages are waiting for a positive impact, and they still don't see it. I think it could have happened with another president. I think it could happen elsewhere in Europe.
But even some of those who've worked closely with Macron believe he exacerbated tensions in France.
Macron didn't want to have this co-management of reforms with the unions because he felt Hollande had gone too far in this respect. And the result was also that not having this kind of dialogue contributed to the eruption that took place with the Gilets jaunes, which is a sort of form of revolution, of people saying we were not listened to. And in fact, on the carbon tax, we should have listened to the people. It's not that people were against the transition to a low carbon economy. It's that they felt that the carbon tax was something that didn't take into account their living condition. I think a big mistake that was made with the carbon tax is that not enough of it was redistributed.
We went to meet some yellow vests. François Gérard, unlike many, is a Parisian. He's proud to have joined in on most of the weekend since the movement started.
The whole thing that triggered the Yellow Vest movement, in fact, it was a gas tax. I think you remember that. But that was just the straw that brought the camel's back. Because everything that the people have been accumulating as far as anger is now popping out. They want Macron to go away. But that's not going to solve the problem, of course, because if Macron goes away, somebody else is going to be taking his place and do the same thing. That's why it's a much, much, much wider change that we need.
Macron and his team denounced the Gilets jaunes as wreckers. As for the deeper divisions exposed by the president's policies, they're barely acknowledged. Stéphane Séjourné has just left the Élysée to run the European election campaign.
On peut être inquiet d'un mouvement social légitime, mais là, ce ne sont plus des vrais gens dans la rue. Ce sont des gens politisés. Et ça, le président, il n'aura jamais peur, il ne sera jamais choqué par des gens qui veulent combattre les institutions et brûler des voitures.
And indeed, order is being maintained by putting armour and thousands of riot police onto the streets of Paris and other cities every Saturday. It's a palliative, but it feels like a state of siege and is hardly likely to resolve political differences. The president's supporters counter that he has responded to the protests with something genuinely new, a large-scale national consultation. The grand débat.
It's an exceptional moment. It's unprecedented, and I don't see comparable experiences in other Western countries.
But there's more to his fight against populism, not least his position on Brexit.
Il est clair que le peuple britannique s'est exprimé en n'ayant pas tout en tête.
Populism is his principal adversary in France, and it's his principal adversary in Europe. So if he feels, which he does, that Brexit is an expression of sort of populist politics, then he, I think, also wants to send a very clear message that Britain has to be in a worse position after Brexit.
It's almost as if his desire for Brexit to be an exemplary lesson means Macron thinks it has to happen.
Je pense que le président est très attaché à ce que quand il y a une décision du peuple, on puisse la mettre en place. C'est pour ça d'ailleurs qu'il est très ferme aujourd'hui dans l'application du Brexit. Pas pour des questions de dureté de ses positions, mais parce qu'il faut respecter aussi la volonté du peuple britannique. Ils ont décidé de sortir, on met en application justement, en tout cas on les aide à sortir avec un deal.
The casting of Brexit, the gilets jaunes, and Hungarian-style illiberal democracy as part of a populist hydra helps to give Macron a coherent message.
La réponse n'est pas la démocratie autoritaire, mais l'autorité de la démocratie.
But the danger may be that having completely dominated the centre ground, Macron will drive those seeking an alternative towards the extremes.
On a l'impression, effectivement, que c'est ou Macron ou Le Pen. Le choix, il est facilement fait. C'est pas acceptable. La France, ça peut pas être Macron ou Le Pen. Des années, j'ai écrit sur ce que j'appelais la partitocratie, c'est-à-dire un mode de fonctionnement des partis politiques totalement à côté de la plaque, parfois corrompu, enfin, ça n'allait pas du tout. Là, on a l'impression que c'est le désert. Je pense que ça, c'est extrêmement dangereux.
You'd have to be foolish to write off President Macron at this stage. In response to the challenge from the Gilets jaunes, he's come up with grand political theatre. The national great debates, the grand débat. As to whether that's worked in turning around the national mood, we won't really see until May's European elections.
Celle à laquelle nous croyons. Je vous remercie.
So Macron, having captured the Élysée, now pitches himself as Europe's man of destiny. But marred in domestic difficulties as he is, that role may prove beyond even his capabilities.